Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
This is for anybody that owns a business or just wants to get their finances in order, especially if you've got a business or you're responsible for one. The most important part of your business is not the widgets you sell or the services you offer. The most important part is the financial background of your business. If you don't have that set up in a solid way, you could be making tons of money. Doesn't even matter. It's all going out the window. Or do you really know where it's going? We're going to talk about that today. Specifically, somebody who offers bookkeeping services for small businesses, small industries, and is accountable, helps you out, make sure it's being done right. Kat Scardaville joins us today. How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. And I can say what I just said because I own a small business and I made the mistake of not doing it right. Like even to the point back in the day, I would generate invoices using Microsoft Word. Don't judge. That was, I saw your eyes. I'm like, yeah,
oh my God, no.
don't ever do that. In the beginning, it served its purpose, but then after a while, in terms of accountability, and I mean that in both ways, accounting and accountability, like what the heck's going on here? What's happening? What do you hear from many of your clients lately? Like what are their bigger challenges when it comes to the finances?
They just don't want to do them, you
And
know? Money is like scary. It's a scary concept and it's different. And they just want to make ends meet. They want to see what goes in, they want to see what goes out. They don't want to overcomplicate things. They want to make sure that they can keep the lights on while maintaining some kind of lifestyle. But a lot of them tend to suffer from a crazy mindset of, I'm sorry, it's not crazy, but a lot of them tend to suffer from a mindset of, oh no, the doors are going to close tomorrow. The doors are going to close tomorrow. Oh no, oh no. And the numbers, the numbers don't lie, and they're the only thing on the planet that doesn't lie. You know,
yeah,
not for nothing. You know, so the the numbers will illustrate where you are, but also where you can go. It'll help you plan accordingly. It'll also help you understand what your behavior patterns are, and it'll pinpoint what your strengths are, but it'll also reveal some points you might need to work on. And that seems
sure.
to be the one of the biggest hurdles a lot of business owners have, because it's hard to admit when you've made a mistake, or when you've made an error, or oh man, I shouldn't have done that, or something like that. So
Sure.
it's yeah, so stuff like that. And I try to guide them. I don't like the parent finger shaking in your face. I don't like that, so instead I prefer to just say, hey, you look, we learned something here, so let's just
hmm
figure it out from here and then move forward. It's not the end of the world. You figured it out, and we just keep going. It's okay.
To your point, I totally get business owners not wanting to deal with the financial stuff, especially I'm going to clearly say here, I am financially literate. I don't want to. I'm a creative guy. And that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
You look at this in a creative way to solve somebody's financial challenges. For me, I just can't even I don't I if I have to generate an invoice, it's like it takes like 2 days. Like I'm bored. I don't want to do it. And sometimes I have
yeah,
to, you know, somebody's
yeah.
not in or whatever, get it done. But the one thing that strikes me very clear on your website, and I've never seen this before, bookkeeping cleanup
Mhm.
services.
Yeah.
Well put. Like so many times you will in a business have stuff going on and it needs to get cleaned up and started fresh. And the cleanup is key. I had somebody do it for me in the last 2 years. And wow, like you just said, no finger pointing. You'll learn things. You'll learn
Yes.
things you never expected to pop up there when you're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's done from a really holistic approach, just because I had a cleanup done recently, and it was for a client that's in the middle of an audit. And
Mm,
um, it was a major hurdle even for me. It was a major hurdle because it was one of those moments where the client feels one way, but you know that it should work a different way. So how do we work on those, interpersonal relationships,
Hmm.
without kind of hurting your, your perspective on things. So in the end, I kind of had to, guide them a little bit. And
Hmm.
then they came to the conclusion themselves. It took time. It took a long time,
Yep.
you know. But they got there. You know what I mean? They got there, and then we collectively worked together, and then line by line, because I can do line by line. Most people don't enjoy doing line by line. I don't know. I like it. It's very zen for me, But they would do the line by. I would do the line by line with them, and like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Okay, then we translate it. Done. Okay, move on.
Mm,
We're not dwelling on the past. We're going forward.
gotcha. Yeah. Let's talk about the other services you offer. So bookkeeping being one of them.
Yes.
How about another one, another two?
Oh, sure, sure. So we do tax prep services as well, and that's fun in itself, because we get to identify where the pain points are for the year, and we get to also figure out, okay, what happened, and why are we paying so much, and how do we plan for the future. Which, so when we do the tax prep, then we kind of lead to tax planning. So what I would normally say to most business owners is, if they're on their own and they're sole proprietors, you're allowed to have a pension. Like, you can do that, like, so you open
Hmm.
up a set or something like that, and then you get yourself like a high yield savings account. You're basically treating yourself like a corporation, because you can. Why can't you? You're allowed,
What? Why don't we jump in there? Because I have this conversation with people I know.
Yeah.
Um, an LLC versus a corporation.
Say,
Okay.
yep.
And if it's an LLC, many small businesses, if it's, one person in the business, do a draw.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
that can be challenging as well, because let's say you need to prove your salary. What's your salary? It's not a W-2,
Yeah.
it's sometimes because you do a personal and business return all in one, many
Mhm.
times if it's that situation. Now it's
Yeah.
all lumped into one. What is actually your salary? And then what hasn't been dispersed from the business to vendors and all that. Again, this
Yeah.
is now getting deep and out of my wheelhouse, but um,
It's okay. It's fine.
that situation, LLC draw versus the corporation,
Mhm.
advantages of both. What do you think? Just, basic stuff here.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So, sole proprietor, if you're doing a tax return for sole proprietor, well, usually what happens is it's a pass-through income. So all of that's going to be on the 1040. So you really don't have anything to worry about. It goes on the Schedule C, the deductions, and then um, the draws. The draws are your take-home pay for your
Yes.
LLC in this case.
Yep.
So now, the interesting thing about draws, not to divert from the question, but the interesting things about the draws is we have to establish some kind of a system, and most creative individuals, because I'm a creative individual myself, but like the creative individuals systematically understand their art form, but as far as outside of that realm, it's a little out of scope to maintain. So sometimes we have to kind of integrate it into their scope, into their field of experience, so they can have it function properly. So we take their systems, right? So like an artist or a musician or something like that, they get paid per gig or something, and then at the end of the month I tell them, okay, you draw your percentage out at the end of the month, and that'll be your take home pay for the month, or whatever, you know
Gotcha.
and then that'll be the pass-through income, and that will qualify for it, because the other is the business income, and then that'll show up someplace else on the return. So there's that. And then my favorite is the S corp. And the S corp is interesting because you get the W-2 from your payroll, right? So you get your W-2 payroll at the end of the year, but you can still draw from the company, right? But that's a little more involved, and is probably better for different time. Otherwise, it's gonna get
Again, this can go deep, and even right down to this conversation I had with some colleagues. One going through a divorce, you have the draw.
Yeah.
How do you know what the salary is when it's a draw? Because
Okay.
you also lumped in the business stuff with that. And the example I gave where it's he's an LLC sole proprietor, and then you have the takes a monthly draw. It's pretty much always the same, he said. But then how do you figure out what is your salary?
Oh, sure. So there's like a general rule, and it just depends. And this is just my opinion. Um, it depends on your comfortability at the end of the month, and this is also one of those things where it's personal preference to the owner. You know what I mean? And we're talking about systems. So
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the profit and loss statement, and at the bottom you see the net profit, if you generated a loss, you can't draw anything. You can't, so because you didn't make any money.
Yep.
So we have to work on that for the following month. But if you made money, you can take 2%, you can take 5%, you can even take 10%. But it's a little high. It just depends on how comfortable you are. Most people take between 2 and 5 points, but it really depends on you, the owner, because in the end, you're on the front line. You know what it takes to keep the lights on. You know
Yeah.
what it takes to do all of that stuff. So I could advise you on which percentage is healthy, but in the end, the decision is ultimately yours. I can like, wax poetic until the cows come home, but in the end, it's up to you. But I will say most people take between 2 and 5.
Yep.
Whatever you choose to do is up to you.
How did you get here? Your journey, where did it begin? Your affinity for numbers and bookkeeping and accounting and all of that.
Oh my gosh. It's been like this, Yeah. Then so I grew up in a family business, and the family business was in material handling. It was in forklifts, scissor lifts, construction equipment,
Gotcha.
and it was run by my mother and my father. And you want to talk about polar opposite people? It was fascinating watching the two of them work in an objective manner. Because I can be objective now, But the fun
So
part,
can I, after looking back at all the challenges within the bookkeeping, and I won't even go there, but yeah, I get it.
yes,
I get it. Mhm.
yeah, I'm preaching to the choir right now. So my mom was a pack rat with the money. She worked for the Bank of New York, and my parents are both immigrants. They're both from South America, and because they grew up in a completely different country that is constantly developing, they have a very interesting perspective on how to save for funds and how to interact with customers and how to interact with clients. And it was always familiar, and it was always in a familial kind of way. Like my dad's from Argentina, and he would have barbecues like every other day. Like I grew up not having a hamburgers and hot dogs as a kid.
Mm.
It was foreign to me. You know what I mean? We had like slabs of beef, slabs of like sausage, slabs of all meat all the time. And my cholesterol's fine, which is hilarious. But it's because my
Right.
mom grew up in Peru, and she was by the coast. So we had seafood, and we had ceviche and all these other things, and potatoes. There's like 130 varieties of potatoes. Oh God, it's so crazy. Anyway, so watching them work with the clients, my father was very charismatic, and my mother was very charming. But what I witnessed in the background was a very complex dynamic between the two of them, and it kind of affected my brother, my sister, and I a bit. But at the same time, we learned a lot. We learned how to interact with customers on a professional level. But we also needed to learn how to interact with each other on a professional level. And at the time, we didn't know how to do that. It was romper room after a while, And I admit my contribution to the chaos for sure. So you fast forward a little bit, and I'd been doing the books for this entire time. I learned how to do them, trial by fire style, and I worked with a variety of accountants that wanted certain things, a variety of CPAs that preferred to plan ahead in certain ways. So um, I learned certain like situations, like tax situations, but I learned it from the bookkeeper's perspective. I didn't know about the higher up until I ventured out onto my own. Um, and then finally, when I left in 2019, it was time to go. At that point, I left in 2019 because it was just time to leave. And the new accountant came in, excuse me, and took over for me. And that was when I learned how to think for myself outside of the company. And I learned to interact with my own family outside the company. I learned to be myself. I learned to accept myself for who I am as opposed to adapting my own identity to the company, because everything was about the company, the company, the company. Um, I have nothing against the company. The company was integral to who I am now and what I do now. But I needed to know who I was, and I needed to know how I can help other people if I wanted to be on my own. So I finally got the opportunity to leave, and then the pandemic happened, and
Mm.
and I was like, okay, super fun. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm gonna go back to school and get my, every band I'd ever been in, because I was a touring drummer for a very long time, and
Wow.
every band I'd ever been in was they made me do the admin work. Like I did the admin work because I knew how to do it. So why don't I just get really good at it? So that's what I did. I finished the following year in December 2020, and I just jumped in with both feet, not knowing what was going to happen. All I knew is I know how to do this really well. How do I get really good at it? And now it's just putting out fires and making sure that everybody's okay, and making sure the books are updated, and making sure that um, they feel taken care of, and they feel okay, and they feel like the client knows that they have somebody in their corner. Because it's crazy that sorry about that. It's crazy that like a lot of these business owners feel alone, and
It's true. It really
yeah.
is. And you want to, when somebody works with you, anybody, they need to
Mhm.
be comfortable in that this is their personal information. You're giving up, their finances.
Yeah.
They don't even talk to their friends about that. You don't want your friends knowing how much you make and all of that. It's a very delicate, intimate relationship when you're working with somebody, and you have to learn the business. Somebody sells widgets over here, somebody sells paint over here, somebody sells cars over here. It's got different dynamics all within that, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I had a project with a plumber, and the plumber needed their what's it called? It needed their books a certain way. And when the project was over, they were happy with how the books were set up. The it was just wild because the AIA had to match with what the book said, and hopefully we accomplished that. But I mean, every client has different needs, and every single individual like requires different care. So, in my experience, I would, I do self work on the regular every day, and I'm constantly trying to think about what if I was in that position, what would I want? And
Mm.
if I was in that position, what would I need? And this is just something that I think everybody has to work on. It's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to not pretend that you know everything. Like, I'm constantly studying, constantly, and I'm constantly asking questions from my mentor, and we we have to just rely on each other and be as open and honest in our communication as possible.
So let's talk about QuickBooks because that's
Yeah.
kind of the standard.
Yes.
What are your thoughts if somebody's making a choice, or let's say, would a business buy the subscription to it typically, and then you work off of their QuickBooks, or you bring your own in, your own? How does that work?
So, QuickBooks is so I'm QuickBooks certified, right? And the software is migrating almost completely to the cloud, and that's being done this year. Um, so what they've done is they've kind of done away with the product support with desktop, except for enterprise.
Hmm.
But enterprise has to be hosted in the cloud now, you
Yep.
know? So all of this is hosted in the cloud. And when you host it in the cloud, now you have to pay a subscription. With online, you had to pay a subscription anyway. So what's the difference? But man, um, it used to be, oh, I can just pay for the software and that's that. And then if I want to upgrade, I just pay for the upgrade and I'm done. And
Yep.
it ain't like that. It's not like that no more. It ain't like that anymore. And
And
um,
that's the way for everything, even Adobe, all of their suite of products, whether it's graphics, Photoshop, audio, all of it, all subscription based. You can't
yeah,
just buy a program anymore.
it's a shame.
Yeah, I miss it. I miss it.
Me too.
Just the aspect of just I bought it, it's mine, I got it.
Yeah,
It.
well, it's here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nah,
Uh,
it's not like that anymore, man. It's not like that
Yep.
anymore. And it's a drag. But it is what it is. It is what it is for sure. And so if so a client has enterprise, and I suggested often that they should migrate to online advanced, because what I learned is that sometimes enterprise tends to get glitchy. And like today, before you and I were getting together, we were entering some transactions, and for whatever reason they didn't take, and I had to enter them again. They didn't take. I had to, oh man, it was a little frustrating, but the file is
Better you than me.
no, for real, yeah.
It's like I don't want to handle any of that. Um, Almost out of time.
Oh, sure.
How does somebody connect with you? I know you offer a free consult.
Yes.
How does it all begin? If somebody wants to clean up their books, change their financial situation, how does it work?
Yeah. Okay. You can go to our website, and that's www.equilibriumconsultantsnj, because we're from New Jersey.com. You can also email us at info@equilibriumconsultantsnj.com, or you can call us 848-565-0113. And those are pretty much the best ways to get in touch with us, frankly. Email's the best, though. Honestly, email's the best.
I love the name Equilibrium because you want to be at a point where you're comfortable and balanced. And I guess
Mm,
that's where the equilibrium comes in there. You want your books balanced, right?
for sure, for sure. But like, just to make you laugh, because I think you can relate. Um, so when you're recording something, you have to EQ it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's kind of where I got it from. EQ
Oh, gotcha.
equals
Okay.
like EQ, you know.
Yeah.
So
So I see it in all different ways now. Yeah. And yeah, I like the fact that you come from things with a creative perspective. Like if you look at most job postings right now, especially for IT, it literally states creative IT person because
yep.
they want a creative thinker to solve the problem. There's a lot that goes behind that. So, and you offer that. Great talking with you today. Learned a lot.
Thanks.
There's so much more to dig into when it comes to finances, and I'm looking forward next time we get a chance to get together.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a great time. Thanks a lot.
Same. All right. Thanks, Kat. We'll catch up
Sure.
soon. We're coming right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.